Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ironworker Gaming channel. I am Ironworker814, and a quick question to start this video out. Have any of you ever dreamed about sticking your hand in a giant toaster looking apparatus and then shooting fireballs out of it? If you have, I mean it's a little weird, but hey, who am I to judge? You are in luck. I have a gun that is going to be right up your alley, because in this video we are going to be reviewing the Jotunn Exotic Fusion Rifle for use in the Crucible. If at any point during this video you find yourself enjoying the content, or laughing at my hilarious jokes, or cringing at my hilarious jokes because they're really not all that funny, feel free to hit the like and subscribe button at your own discretion. But how about that Jotunn? If you were around when this gun was first released into Destiny 2's Crucible, you probably remember people screaming, "Nerf this thing," within the first 3 hours of it showing up in the game. Yeah, nerf this thing right now. Better yet, throw this gun in an incinerator and nerf its ashes. Funny thing is, these cries have since subsided without Bungie altering Jotunn in any way. So what happened here? Was this gun as good as the knee-jerk reaction of the community would suggest, or not? And how is Jotunn performing in today's sandbox? We'll answer these questions and more in this review. But first, let's go over how to obtain the Jotunn for those who have not already done so. So if you were around and playing Destiny 2 during Season of the Forge, you probably remember waiting around for Glad and company to solve that Niobe Labs puzzle and unlock the Berguzia Forge for the entire community, hence allowing players to finally get their chance at acquiring the Jotunn. The acquisition process of acquiring this weapon has now been streamlined after the Shadowkeep update, making the Jotunn obtainable through a Giant's Might exotic quest, which is available through Ada 1. The Giant's Might quest is going to ask you to wipe out some Vex and then complete 10 legendary weapon frames. The kicker is, you're once again going to need ballistics logs to complete these frames, and you can only acquire these by completing Ada 1's weekly bounties. And as you may or may not know, there are only 2 weekly bounties available per week, so if you don't have any ballistics logs on hand, you are looking at 5 weeks until the Jotunn is finally yours. Okay, into your stats and damage values. Jotunn is a solar exotic fusion rifle, which performs a little bit differently than most fusion rifles. This is highlighted in its intrinsic trait, which is charge shot. Hold down the trigger to charge up a tracking shot that explodes and burns on impact. So unlike other fusion rifles, Jotunn fires a single projectile. As far as the stats go, the only two you really need to pay attention to when looking at the Jotunn is the handling and reload, which are both not great. The charge time for Jotunn is 860, which puts it on par with other high-impact fusion rifles like Arantil or Loaded Question. The only perk on this gun that is worth taking note of is Shield Disorient. This really doesn't do anything in PvP, but it can be useful in PvE in certain scenarios. Now let's take a peek at the damage values, and oh man, did figuring these numbers out take some doing. So ears up, Guardians, because this is a little murky. The Jotunn is actually going to damage targets in 3 ways. First is impact damage, second is explosive damage, and third is burn damage. For impact damage, on a direct hit, the Jotunn is going to be doing a whopping 277 points of damage. The explosive damage will also tack on another 80 points, but these 80 points of damage from the explosion can also be achieved on a near miss. And when I say near miss, I mean like directly next to the target. The blast damage diminishes pretty quickly the further the target is away from ground zero. And then the burn damage will appear in the form of a fiery puddle left in the wake of the projectile's explosion. This damage field dissipates very quickly though. The most I saw during testing come off a single target was 2 ticks of damage. And these ticks of damage either popped up as 7s or 8s, meaning somewhere deep within the code, it's probably listed as 7.5 points of damage. So, did you catch all that? Easy peasy, right? So what does this mean for the gun in-game? Well, why don't we start off by looking at the pros. Alright, let's start out by looking at the raw damage that the Jotunn can output. 277 points of damage on a direct hit, plus 80 points of blast damage equals 357 points of total damage on a single target. This is more than you will ever need to knock a Guardian into next week. It doesn't care about your overshield, it doesn't care about a healing rift, it doesn't care about golden gun resistance, and it doesn't even care about your heir apparent arc shield. If this projectile connects with your target, that target is going down right now. Now the damage resistance for most supers is enough to prevent this thing from one-shotting them, but Jotunn will deliver a guaranteed 2-shot kills on Guardians in their supers. And then due to the fact Jotunn does explosive and burn damage, if you get a bunch of enemy Guardians all, cuddled up with each other, they're gonna get a little taste of this damage too. Plus, the Jotunn is firing tracking projectiles. Now, this doesn't track like a Seeker Mind or bend around corners like the Truth Rocket Launcher might, but it does alter its course to help chase the target down for you. But wait, there's more. Jotunn fires projectiles that have no damage fall off, meaning you can cross-map opponents. And by cross-map, I mean literally cross-map. If you see an unsuspecting enemy Guardian just standing 300 meters away from you, fire a shot off at him. He's probably gonna die. Also, the Jotunn is very good at harassing snipers, as long as you watch your head. Once you get a good feel for the charge time, you can peek lanes and corners and get a shot off on an enemy sniper, leaving them little time to react. And the last point I wanted to make here, I wasn't sure whether to put it in the pros or the cons, but here it is. Using the Jotunn effectively will probably make you the most hated player in the Crucible match. Whether you want that stigma or not, infuriating the enemy team and putting them on tilt is usually going to work out in your favor. So, I'm sure we've pretty well established that this gun is an absolute monster in the Crucible, but it does have some issues it has to work around. Which is probably the reason this gun is not seeing extreme heavy usage in PvP at this point in time. So let's take a look at these now. Okay, into the cons, and these are definitely some things you're going to want to keep in mind when using the Jotunn. First off, you're going to need to give yourself extra room for the shot to come out of this gun. Remember, you are not shooting a bullet, you are shooting a big fiery ball, and this thing needs some room to operate. So just be mindful of this when you're firing around tight corners, or when you're playing around upward changes in elevations like stairs, or when you're playing around your teammates, because teammates seem to love to jump right in front of you as soon as the shot is about to leave the gun. Any of these things will result in premature projectile detonation and could also result in self-damage. Now, taking damage from any source is never good, but when you do it to yourself, it just burns a little bit. Get it? Burns a little? Never mind. The next con is, the tracking on these projectiles feels a little bit inconsistent. During testing, to get these tracking shots to proc, I found I had to have my crosshairs pretty well right on the target as the shot released. Just shooting in the general direction of the enemy is not going to do the trick, at least on PC. Might be a little more friendly with the aim assist on console, but I did not test on console, so sorry about that. But even when you're perfectly locked onto a target, it doesn't seem to guarantee a direct hit. So how aggressively these projectiles actually track is probably tied to a certain extent to RNG. I mean, there were times when I fired this weapon and the shot would, really dive and turn quite aggressively toward the target, and other times, not so much. A couple other things that can be factoring in here is the fact that the tracking needs a little bit of time before it kicks in and engages. Also, there is probably a point in time where this bolt loses its tracking. Some of this could also be tied to your target's movement. Maybe a few quick changes in direction could throw the tracking off of the projectile. So if you feel like your shot should have hit and it didn't, it's probably due to one of these reasons or a combination of them all. Also keep in mind these projectiles are not hit scan, meaning they do have travel time and move just a little bit slower than a grenade would, probably more in line with a low velocity rocket. That makes these shots pretty easy to sidestep away from if the target knows it's coming. Or, for these roly-poly hunters, they can just dodge out of the way, guaranteeing a missed shot. Nothing against hunters, I love you guys too, but you gotta admit, roly-poly is a pretty accurate description for you guys. But anyway, the last thing you're gonna want to watch out for here is engaging with enemies when you are out of cover. Missing your initial shot is going to put you in trouble. there are 3 things working against you here. Jotunn has a long charge time, your projectiles have travel time, and the fact that the handling on Jotunn is kind of doo-doo. So, if you can help it, just try not to be away from cover for too long when you're using the Jotunn. So, is the Jotunn something you want to be bringing into PvP with you? Generally speaking, I would say yes, especially for lower skill or casual players. The ease of use with this gun is pretty good, and it's capable of some amazing things. Just be mindful of the cons when using it. Now, if you're thinking about taking this weapon in the trials or high-level comp, I don't know, the inconsistencies of this gun might worry me a little bit, but if you're going into those activities, you probably know better than I do anyway. But for your general use, run-of-the-mill PvP activities, this gun is probably a really good option. So if you've enjoyed this weapon review or found it useful in any way, consider hitting the like button to show your support. Or you can hit the subscribe button to keep up with more reviews, guides, and discussions, all brought to you by the one and only Union Ironworker making Destiny YouTube videos, I think. If you'd like to come talk to me live, you can catch me on Twitch. Just look for Ironworker814 over there, drop a follow, and you will get notified whenever I go live. I tried streaming on YouTube a little bit ago, but had some technical difficulties. Maybe we'll try that again one of these days soon here. You could also find Ironworker814 on Twitter, but the best way to get a hold of me is simply by commenting down below. Feel free to leave any questions, input, or feedback down there, and I will be sure to respond to you. With all that being said, I'd like to thank you for choosing to spend a piece of your day checking out my content. You guys are awesome, and I will catch you on the next one.